Welcome to the Shift Your Story, Change Your Life podcast. I'm Allie Rose, certified clinical hypnotherapist and subconscious success coach. I help my clients stop self-sabotage and feel safe to create more wealth, worth, and wellness from within. If you find yourself stuck repeating the same unhelpful patterns in your life, health, business, or relationships, even after all the mindset work, this podcast is for you. Each week, you'll hear deep dives into the hidden beliefs shaping your life and live hypno coaching sessions where someone shifts a block in real time. Because willpower isn't the problem, your subconscious story is. And when you shift it at the root, everything else begins to change. So let's dive in. Welcome back to the Shift Your Story, Change Your Life podcast. Today, I'm doing something very different to what I've done on the podcast before. If you don't already know this about me, I am a huge fan of Bridgerton. I have probably watched season 1 at least 50 times. And as much as I try not to, so often when I'm watching the shows, it's like my brain is constantly scanning for the subconscious patterns that are playing out in characters. And it's why I love reality TV shows so much, because I'm fascinated by the human behavior, and also why I spend most of the time wanting to reach into the screen and just let them know the pattern that I'm seeing, because I know that if they saw it, things would play out so differently. So today, what we're doing is I'm doing a Bridgerton breakdown where I'm breaking down some of the subconscious patterns of the main characters of season 4, Benedict and Sophie. So if you're listening to this on the day that it drops, February 25th, 2026, it's the day before the second part of season 4 drops. So I am pulling from what we have seen so far of Benedict over the last 3 seasons, plus the first part of this season. And we really only have a sliver of Sophie so far, which means I'm naming what is present without obviously having the whole story. But I feel like even in the first part of season 4, I have enough that I can name what Sophie's subconscious pattern is. Okay, so before we dive in case you're new to my world, I want to clarify a few things. When I say a subconscious pattern, I mean the pattern that is running below conscious level. It's the autopilot move, the default setting, the thing that your system does before you even have time to form a coherent thought about it. Like I said, they're below conscious level, meaning you're not fully aware of them. And they run about 95% of our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And the reason this matters is because most of us do not just have patterns, we build identities out of these patterns. And Sophie and Benedict's dynamic is a masterclass in 2 subconscious patterns colliding, where one person is magnetized to mystery and the other person has learned that visibility can come with severe consequences. So while you're listening, I want you to listen for if any of these things resonate in your own life. What patterns of Benedict and Sophie are you playing out? All right, so let's start with Benedict. Benedict is the kind of character that most of us would probably describe as creative, romantic, effortless, the one who feels like possibility. And there is truth in that. But when you look at Benedict through a subconscious lens, you can also see something else, which is the pattern of staying undefined or uncommitted as a form of protection. Benedict fully embodies this I don't want to be boxed in energy. And sometimes it's not always about authenticity and freedom. Sometimes it's about avoiding the moment where your choice actually becomes real. Because the moment that your choice becomes real, it's the moment it can be judged by others. It's the moment that it can be measured by others. It's the moment that it can be evaluated or the moment that you can fail. When you define something, when you are clear about something, when you name something that you want, that brings a level of expectation, which can bring a level of pressure because pressure brings the risk of disappointing someone, even if that someone is just yourself. Or you could be judged or feel trapped or being responsible for someone else's emotional experience. So, what people who fall into this pattern do is they keep it open, they keep it flexible, you keep it kind of, we'll see, you stay in that kind of foggy area in that possibility. I find that people with this pattern keep the door cracked, even just a little, because the moment that they choose, they lose that protective shield of potential. So the show gives you a perfect little snapshot of this early on with Benedict and Sophie because their connection begins in this little pocket of privacy, in that small moment where he offers the dance lesson. So in this moment, it's intimate, but it's still kind of contained, right? It's still charged, but it's not fully real life. And then she refuses to give him her name, which is such a small detail, but subconsciously it's everything. Because for Benedict, the unanswered question is the hook. It plays right into that potential possibility, that lack of definition. And that mystery gives him something to chase. And chasing lets him stay in the part of love that feels like electricity without stepping into the part of love that requires actual risk. So, I want to talk a little bit about potential. Potential is seductive because potential never has to prove itself or be consistent. It's always kind of promising and feels very light. And real life is not always that way. And if you have ever learned that you're safer when people are impressed by a version of you or inspired by you, then the ordinary and sometimes ugly parts of being loved can feel like being exposed. It's like when you really love someone, it's about really knowing who they are, flaws and all. And when we love someone's potential, we get to stay in more of that fantasy of who they are. There's not a lot of risk there. And this is why Sophie, the woman in silver, hits him so hard. She's not just a person to him in that moment. She's a mystery. She's the unknown. She is intimacy without the day to day vulnerability of being fully known. And his subconscious eats that up because you can long for someone you cannot fully have without ever having to face what it would require of you to actually receive them. And I just want to add a little bit of nuance here because I'm not claiming that Benedict wants her to stay a mystery forever. Of course, we see he wants her name. He wants to see her face. He wants that reveal. But the point is that the reveal turns magic into real life, and real life asks something of you. And for a lot of people, that's where fear shows up, even when the desire is real. And here's the part that might sting a little bit. But if it stings, it's probably true. Longing for something or someone is a way to avoid true intimacy. Longing makes you look romantic or like you feel deeply. And sometimes longing is real love, yes. But sometimes longing is a strategy because it lets you feel alive without requiring you to be fully met. And fully met is where the real risk lives. Being fully met, fully known means you cannot hide behind the potential. It means that you have to show up imperfectly and humanly. It means you have to receive, and receiving is its own kind of vulnerability because receiving means you cannot pretend that you do not need much and you cannot pretend that you are fine if you are not. So, Benedict's pattern is not simply that he is afraid of commitment. Benedict's pattern is that he feels safest when he is chasing the unknown because the unknown gives him adrenaline and inspiration and an excuse to stay in possibility. And possibility is intoxicating. When real life has ever taught you that choosing wrong could cost you everything. And Benedict has plenty of examples of that, especially in terms of Antony and the way that we saw things play out there. So now let's talk about Sophie. Sophie is someone who has learned how quickly circumstances can change, and she moves through the world with a kind of quiet alertness that makes total sense when you have lived a life where being seen comes at a deep cost. And the show really makes that clear in those flashbacks where you see how quickly a child can be taught what she is allowed to call love. You see her being corrected before Lady Penwood, the stepmother, even appears, being told not to call her father her father. And then you see the stepmother actually look at her, really look at her. And there is something that I just found so chilling about how fast the atmosphere changed because you realize that Sophie is not just a girl in a home. For Lady Penwood, she is a problem to be managed. And even the label ward matters here because it sounds respectable while also keeping her in her place. And that is the theme of Sophie's entire life. Close enough to serve, but not close enough to belong. Even at her father's grave, I watched this episode over again. And even at her father's grave, her stepmother says to her, "I'll take care of you and make you a maid. It will make you invisible and you will be protected that way." So Sophie's mind takes that in. It's already been taking this in throughout her childhood whenever things were different for her when she was the ward, right? But her mind now takes this in even further. Stay invisible, stay safe. So when she becomes the woman in silver, what we're watching is not just a costume. We are watching her give herself a permission slip because a mask really does something psychologically and subconsciously. And what it does is it allows you to be bold without having to pay for it. It lets you be chosen for a moment without immediately spiraling into the question of what being chosen could cost you. And we really see this when Sophie goes to the ball. So Sophie's pattern is that she wants and self protects at the same time. And if you have this pattern, you already know how disorienting it can feel from the inside because there's this one part of you that is starving for more and another part of you that is scanning for the danger of actually getting that more, of being fully seen in receiving that. So you might not even realize that you're doing it until you notice that you keep letting yourself hope, but you do not allow yourself to settle into it. You let yourself feel desire, but you do not let yourself risk being known. Now, from the outside, someone, maybe even me, I might call it self sabotage, but from the inside, what it really is self protection. When the truth is that your system has learned somewhere along the way that being seen and allowing yourself to fully receive can come with devastating consequences. And we literally watch Sophie's world crumble the moment that she is discovered. We watch Lady Penwood connect the dots. We watch those consequences hit quickly, and Sophie getting pushed out the second it becomes clear that she crossed this invisible line of allowing her longing, her desire to become something more real, that she actually played it out. And to be honest, this is where Benedict and Sophie become painfully relatable because Benedict is drawn to Sophie's mystery for the same reason Sophie uses mystery. Distance can feel safer than closeness when closeness has historically meant vulnerability without protection. And Sophie's protection in life has always come at a cost. So you get this kind of push pull dynamic where one person is chasing and romanticizing and getting high off of the possibility, while the other person is watching for the catch and protecting herself from the disappointment that she has lived through over and over and over again in her life. And you even see this in how Benedict searches after the ball. Because he's not looking for Sophie in the fullness of her life. He's looking for the woman in silver. He's looking for the idea. He's scanning faces for a feeling. He's hunting for the fantasy version of her when she's standing right in front of him because the fantasy version of her is safe to want. The real version of her would require him to confront the world she actually lives in and the role he would have to play if he wanted to love her in reality, not just in fantasy. And then we get to the line that makes everybody inhale. And if you haven't watched it yet, then I'm going to say, spoiler alert here. He says, "Be my mistress." Oh. And I want to be clear here because I can already hear the reactions. This is not me defending him and it's not me condemning him. This is me naming the pattern. That line is not just a scandal. That line is Benedict's subconscious revealing its limit. It's him saying, I want you, but I want you in a way that does not require me to risk the life I have, the name I have, the identity I have, the safety I have. It's where Benedict still gets to feel free and still gets to feel powerful and still gets to avoid the vulnerability of being fully changed by the love he claims to want. And for Sophie, that line is not just insulting. That line is the exact confirmation of the fear she has carried her whole life, which is that being chosen can still mean being hidden and being desired can still come with a cost and that love can still ask you to be small. And here's the question under so many relationships. And here is the question underneath so many relationships that feel intense, confusing, addictive, and meant to be. And I want you to really sit with it. Do you want the person or do you want what the person represents? Because sometimes we are not chasing love, we are chasing an idea of who we could become if the story finally worked out. And sometimes we are not running from love. We are running from what happens after we are chosen. Because being chosen means being fully seen. And being fully seen means that you can be hurt. And for some of our nervous systems, being hurt feels like the one thing that cannot happen again. So let me bring it back. If you are a Benedict type, the question is not, why can't I commit? The question is, where are you keeping your life undefined so you do not have to risk being fully seen in making a choice? Where you are staying in possibility because possibility does not ask you to show up on the day you are tired, messy, insecure, or ordinary? And where are you addicted to longing for something because longing lets you feel alive without requiring you to actually receive what you say you want? And if you're a Sophie type, the question is not, why do I run? Why do I hide? The question is, where have you learned that visibility is unsafe, so much so that you keep your desire small, even when your soul wants more? Where you disappear right when the door opens because some part of you does not trust what happens after you are seen or praised or chosen or loved. And if you see yourself in both of them, because a lot of people do, then maybe the pattern is this. You want connection, but you want connection without risk. You want intimacy, but you want intimacy without being fully exposed. You want love, but you want love without the vulnerability of being fully known and seen. And that makes a lot of sense until you realize that it is also the exact reason that you keep repeating the same story, the same pattern, just with different names. So, here is what I want you to do after this episode. I want you to notice where you are chasing what you cannot have and romanticizing it, or where you're disappearing when things get real. Notice where you're staying undefined and calling it freedom, waffling between things, or where you are hiding your desire and calling it being practical. And then I want you to ask yourself, what do I believe would happen if I actually stayed, if I named what I really want, if I named and made a decision? What would happen if I let myself be fully seen? So here's the thing I know about subconscious patterns is that they are not permanent. They can be shifted. And so often what it takes to shift a subconscious pattern is feeling safe enough to be fully yourself. So my hope is in part 2 of season 4 is that Sophie could feel safe being fully seen and Benedict could feel safe actually committing and defining what he wants. And so often we are hurt in relationship. And I'm a big believer that we heal in relationship. And so my belief is I have not read the books, but obviously I feel like there is going to be some sort of happily ever after. But my belief is that those two can help each other heal these subconscious patterns. So I'm excited to see how it all plays out. So we're going to wrap up, but I would love to hear from you. If you liked this type of breakdown, if you want me to keep doing this, not just for Bridgerton, but for other shows that I'm watching, could you please message me and tell me? Because I absolutely will. I love this. I do this for myself anyway. It just comes easily, it comes naturally to me. So if you loved this, let me know. You can reach out to me on Instagram, Facebook, or email and literally just shoot me a short message and I will take that as my sign. And if you hated it, let me know too. And I will probably never do it again. All right. That is all for today. I hope that this was fun. I hope that this was helpful. I hope you'll go back and watch part 1 of season 4 and also watch part 2 of season 4 with different eyes and that you can see these patterns really playing out in Sophie and Benedict's life. And I'm sending you all so much love and gratitude. Until next time. Bye. Thank you so much for joining us today for this episode of the Shift Your Story, Change Your Life podcast. If today's conversation sparked something in you, I'd love to hear about it. Feel free to send me a message on social media. I'm at the Allie Rose on both Facebook and Instagram. And if you want to be coached on a future episode or explore what it would look like to work with me one-on-one, head over to shiftyourstorypodcast.com. And if you never want to miss an episode, make sure to subscribe and leave a rating and review. It helps more people find this work. Until next time, keep shifting, keep growing, and most importantly, I want you to remember that your story isn't set in stone. You always have the power to shift it.